First best destiny. Even if one does not believe in destiny, one could actually be claimant to there being a positive of first best destiny. For example, if you're an agent of free will, right, which is my claim, even though there are many people who are against self-determinacy. Well, I'll tell you this. From where I've come from, I'm alive. There's a whole lot of frickin' free will to even my existing. So the deal is that even in a system of free will, of many choices, of decisions about decisions, decisions about choices, choices about decisions, right? And meta decisions and meta choices, right? So the deal is, as you're making these choices, right, and you have some beginning, these are things that you didn't necessarily choose about oneself, right? These are variables that are actually described to you by your very nature, given to you by the world, your family, your genes, your culture. And then you have the things that you determine, right? So you determine things about what you eat. Well, what's cool is with epigenetics, you actually are turning on certain gene expressions based on some of those things. You are deciding how you're going to deal with stress and stressors potentially, right? And if you're doing that, you're also influencing one's epigenetic markers, okay? Even though you could be doing, and this could be really good because you could be doing some things to actually stop certain cycles that have been patterns in your genes previously, in terms of expressions. Say, I will not take my generational curse of alcoholism. I will stop yesterday, right? I will stop a long time ago so that you don't actually bring about some of the negative impacts of what those generational curses are. For example, you're like, well, I'm not going to treat my children badly because guess what? I'm not going to do the things that relieve my internal controls, right, to have a free expression that is negative to myself and the individuals within my domain. Okay. So the deal is that means with your determinacy, with your ability to choose, right, that if you are choosing consistently, considerately, with a great deal of forethought, you can be pruning certain probability spaces that you might incur, right? So you're going to say, well, these sets of futures have collapsed, that these sets of futures I'm no longer going to explore, and because you've in your mind set apart a particular path, you're saying you're actually expanding those particular probability spaces. You're saying, okay, so by making these choices, this is what's going to happen now. That these probability spaces that have expanded, I will continue along ever expansive paths to try to find what is actually that particular first best destiny. And these things are, they're not determined by your culture. They're not determined by an exterior reality. I mean, to some degree, one might say, well, if you don't do these things, your genetics are a failure. Or if you don't do these things, these other things are problematic. And to some degree, maybe these things are accurate, right? I mean, there could be some potentiality of that. But the good news is, since you are actually deciding and designing your particular persona, your particular future, you get to determine what is actually important. What is important in those spaces, what will be important in your future. And what's great about that is that even if one day all you decided to be was kind to other individuals, right, you would have positively touched the world. Right? I mean, that might lead to more plants being grown. That might lead to, people deciding to become farmers instead of warriors. That may decide to people to design music instead of weapons. You never know what your kindness is going to do. You don't necessarily know some of the implications of your determinacy, but if you're doing it in love, you're doing it well. You're doing it with good choice and merit, and you might not always like the impact of what that's going to be, and people may not take what you think as an expression of love or an expression of friendliness or an expression of kindness to be the same thing, even though there may be accuracies to what it is that you've defined as these things, because sometimes people choose tenuous and weak versions because it benefits them in some way. But the great thing, so we're going to get back to First Best Destiny. So now that you've made all these choices, you've reached your end, right? And the thing is that you don't actually know if you've reached your first best destiny until your very last breath, right? Even though you may not actually know at that point. And you may have an awareness that, yes, I'm along the path of this great thing. And then you may have a good death, which I hope you're blessed with a good life and a good death. And in that, you will have, once your probability spaces have all collapsed to zero, and you have taken up this null space, in this moment, all of your experiences, all of your choices leading to this point will have been ascribed to the full potentiality of your being. You may have reached your pinnacle experience in this world in terms of what were your initial states and what will be your end outcomes. And for this, I wish you the best. I hope that you work incredibly hard to merit for yourself to the best of your ability, and within the hopes of the fabrics of whatever your time allows for you now, that you achieve that first best destiny. Thank you. Live long and prosper.